Hey everyone, good morning, afternoon, and evening. Welcome to CKAN Monthly Live number 43. And my name is Kate Samfer from CKAN Marketing Work Group, and I'll be your host. So let's take a quick look at our agenda for today. Let me check. Okay. So after this brief, we will hand things over for a 30-minute presentation. Following that, we've set aside 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A, and then we'll wrap up with a few minutes for community announcements before we close the session. Just a quick housekeeping note. This session is being recorded and will be shared on the CKAN YouTube channel. So please also make sure your microphone is on mute during the presentation. As everyone knows, this year is CKAN's 20th anniversary, and we are encouraging anyone who uses or manages CKAN to send their stories. And also we'll share a link to the meeting notes for today's session. And for Q&A, you can drop your questions into the chat at any time, and I'll queue them up for the Q&A after the speaker's presentation. Also, you can sign up for the newsletter to receive information and everything about CKAN. You can just visit ckan.org, scroll down, you can sign up for the newsletter. No, I just clicked it. Yep, so you can also check into the ckan.org for the anniversary event. Scroll down, you can also take part into the sharing your stories. Whenever you are, or if you are a data manager, CKAN user, please do feel free to send your stories as well. You can see it on the ckan.org, 20 years of CKAN celebration. Oh, this is the same as from last month. Yes, CKAN 2.12 is coming up, just an FYI. And also you can check us on social media channels, LinkedIn, YouTube, and X. But before I turn over the virtual mic to our speaker, just to give you a context, the Provenance Sandbox and the OOI experiment with CKAN. So this is also to show us how we can move from passive repositories to active infrastructure. And so I think he's ready. He's very excited, I know. I'm excited to introduce Steven De Costa, Chairman of Link Digital. Steven is going to walk us through the Provenance Sandbox and show us a live demo of datasets in CKAN that are described by Croissant, sealed with an intent, and verified by the Objective Observer Initiative. So Steven, the virtual mic is yours.
Thanks, Kate. And hello, everyone. I'm going to try and not be too excited, because if I get too excited, I'll talk too quick and cover too many things. So I want to try and keep it slow, keep it easy, and just focus on a couple of things. But there are some screens to show, some things to walk through. So let me bring up a deck. Let me share screen. And some may have had some familiarity. What did I just do? Click share. I already just left out my wrong button. Folks might have seen that I talk about this Objective Observer Initiative from time to time. So this is another one of those kind of talks where I'm going to talk about it. But the Provenance Sandbox is something that has come from, you know, where that project and where other things are looking to land. What is probably obvious to a lot of people is that data is used for machine learning, you know, and one of the key things that we want to really understand about data is, you know, who stands behind it, how did it kind of come to be, and what does the data consent to? When you think of data as something like an image, a creative work, then, you know, consent would have to come from something like the artist, the primary producer. But it's not just that, it's consent from the custodian of the measurement, the thing that it was sampled from. If it's a place, if it's a time, how do you hold those things and how do you have the provenance available? So we kind of face a bit of a crisis in terms of the black box of AI as well. So once data is in and it's being used for machine learning, how would we correct things that might be completely wrong or bad or, you know, indifferent to our expectations? And while the first tranche of AI models have been sort of built on passive static data repositories, there's a great opportunity for the CKAN community to really look into and build towards active data repositories that are very ready for machine learning use cases, so constructed for that purpose. But really, if we can't verify the lineage and the intent behind our data, then we're building a future of AI on a foundation of sort of shifting sand. We might publish something right now, we might know the topology now, but as things change, we won't really be able to hold on to it. So it's sort of an overview of some of the challenges. So Provenance Sandbox, I say Providence quite often, I apologize for that, but Provenance Sandbox is powered by CKAN. It's a sandbox as in something to play with, muck around with. For Link Digital, and for me personally, it's something I want to really work with and work out some of these issues. And over time, use the data sets to re-ingest and not just machine learning for like models, but machine learning for agentic sort of operations. And for folks who are following along, things like Obsidian are being used quite a bit, markdown files with semantic tagging, the concept of what memory is, storage is, contextual storage, linked storage, graphed storage, all this kind of stuff. And with folks doing their own vibe coding, there's a lot of opportunity for people building their own knowledge bases. And CKAN's actually a really cool tool for that. It's got a lot of features. It's very API happy to work with other tools. So again, that's why I'm calling it a sandbox, because there's lots of different ways you could use CKAN with AI work use cases. But it starts with provenance is sort of like where things land, but you might call it providence, as in what's the act, what's the starting point. And in my view, that's the statement of intent. If something has a statement of intent, then after that you can have evidence of that intent, and that's really quite useful. So what's the OOI and how are we kind of addressing it, or how have I been addressing it? So it's kind of like a research and development program. I spoke about it early in the year, in January, at the Linux Australia event. It's all about causality or cause and effect. But how the data is going to be reused is kind of up for grabs. And I kind of have to get into it to show people. But I have a very strong sort of like ethical understanding of where I think this can go. I think it's going to transform abstract AI ethics into sort of machine readable, verifiable sort of records of trust. The idea of what trust is kind of a synthetic agreement. How we agree on how we're going to operate in civic contexts, in social norms, is very difficult to sort of adjudicate and find justice in, unless that synthetic agreement is somehow tangible, somehow kind of constructed, somehow readable. And if we're going to use a lot of information and AI and supporting technologies, it really does have to be machine readable, machine actionable as well. So again, ML data, this Provenance Sandbox, is a lot of things, or attempting to be a lot of things, but that's the sandbox as I see it at the moment. And working with others, working with data sets over time, it's a co-constructive effort. And it's a non-engagement farming sort of effort as well. It's not like I'm trying to build things that will harvest data from different sources and make that reusable or consumable just for the sake of it. It's co-constructing, it's optimizing, and building things that there's a strong sort of lineage of consent around them as well. So community orientated, talking with people. I spent a lot of time in the last couple of years talking to folks about this kind of project and these kind of challenges. Building in the open on GitHub. On my personal repo under Stalin is the alpha version of some of the code of what you'll see. Under the Datasets repo, there's a mirror of that code of the alpha. But once it gets to beta, they'll be synced together, and they'll be kind of the records of kind of truth, I guess, verifiable code against the project itself. And I personally have been kind of wanting to build with others. Every Sunday, there's a thing called ODSX, which is started with the Canadian Open Data Society, like the CODS idea, Open Data Society X, a bit like TEDx, a bit like, you know, wherever you are in the world, you can have an open data kind of social approach to things. So you kind of make it your own place. And I just think it's a good opportunity right now. There's a lot of opportunity to build together. A lot of people want to have the same sort of social, civic, GovTech, whatever it might be, outcomes. But how we coordinate right now is really up to us. A lot of history has been coordinated through particular projects, but there's outcomes that we can coordinate around as well. So a social mission, just as much as a technical sort of project, is just as likely to win. So block builds is something I aim to do and try to do every Sunday, 7 a.m. my time, for a couple of hours, just be available. And later on, that'll be shared. So after this, we'll share the links. If people want to come along, that would be awesome. And what's the kind of stack behind the sandbox? So I will be showing everyone, doing a bit of a demo in a sec, but the stack is forming up as really concepts. So the OOI, the Objective Observer Initiative, has got its own logical model, which I'll show you guys in a sec. But the readable surface when it comes to data is just a CKAN portal. The croissant sort of BCAT profile that's associated with it is got ready to go. The actual use case will be dependent on what you want to express in each data set, and that's being established kind of now for the data sets that I've been putting up there for Link Digital and the experiments I've been running. But working with Ian, he's been attending the Croissant working group meetings with the ML Commons organized stuff, and we'll be looking at publishing more on that soon, and I'll show you more of that in a sec. But again, the idea is create data with intent, have the data show its evidence of intent as like a chain, have the data readable on ML data, and then reconsume that as part of the causal history and the causal intent that moves forward to build. Well, I guess I'll show you in a sec. So demo time. All right. Now, first of all, I'll show you the reading surface. So this is like the social experience of the OOI. It's think of it as like social epistemology, or what do we know? We know amongst others, how we come to know things. And this has been built to demonstrate some of this stuff. One of the things that's been built is this workshop. The idea being, if you're co-constructing something and you want a statement of intent that happens first, you can say, well, I'm going to produce an article. The context of the article is going to be for a certain audience. The source material for the article can be part of that declaration as well. If you want that article to land in terms of an expected knowing from someone else would know something from the article, you can declare that up front as well. Then going through a process, whether you do this like with a model, an AI, or whether you do it with other people, the same sort of process still works. So you can seal your intent to create the article. You can create your first drafts. You can walk through that draft and read it. You can make decisions about adjustments. The idea is, again, everything becomes a chain of evidence of intent that starts with the statement of intent, or the construct's statement of intent. In this case, this workshop is intended for the OOI itself. So the project will have readings which will hopefully give people context what the project's about, and it's using it's dogfooding its own process to say constructs come out of it. So this one has landed in an article. Others land in similar sort of articles, and if you click to go through to them, you'll see that almost like the metadata statement is there as well, and depending on how many drafts you go through, that will be part of it. So things don't get deleted or archived, they get superseded, and the intent is, again, kind of that chain of intent. That's the reading surface. So it's a co-constructive, declarative, and sort of like measured way of creating in that sense. Something else that's related to that is someone else's business. If folks know Douglas Adams, the books, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, someone else's business was kind of like an invisibility cloak. The idea being if it's someone else's business, no one cares. It's not a matter of your business. And in the OOI, the concept here is, again, if there's something external to your matters and you have a declared statement of intent about the matters that you're concerned with, the business that you're ongoing with, then do you just bring everything in? Do you want to have a point of ingress where that external thing will be part of your internal project, your internal concept of what you're creating with others? So the same thing happens. You can go through a declared process to say you're reviewing something. You can review something that will, the hash 256 sort of thing from formal externalities, then say that's part of the internal project and it's registered. Again, you can then, the idea is you register it in the context that you want to bring into your project. So the externality or the thing will have its own context for how it was created, how it was to be read. But to bring it into say a workshop process, you give it an actual summarized context. And so your intent about the way you're going to use it and co-construct with it is declarative. It's not just up for reinterpretation or opinion or beliefs by others in why you're using it. And I think this is, in my view, again, it's just kind of like demonstrating or dog-fooding the approach, because the complexity of, what is an honest construct? Did you take someone else's work? Is there merit being given back to that other person? Are you declaring, are you honestly declaring how much you took from it in what context, things like that? And a great way to do that is to do it all up front. So that's kind of the reading service. There's a bit more there, but that's mostly what I want to show. The next side of the project is the observer experience. So that was the social experience. The observer is meant to be, well, objective. The idea being various experiments are data collection or data orientated. And I want to open this up as an experiment sort of platform. So folks will have the ability to create different experiments that create data. Data will go onto the ML data Provenance Sandbox. They can be reused for different contexts. The ones that are here at the moment are largely to do with information theory and complex theory, which underpins the whole sort of structure of the platform. But one of them, the Atlas, is about the platform itself. So it covers the idea model, which is largely around participation. Those who act are those who would have a statement of intent. If you're going to be an actor that happens to be an AI agent, for example, some custodian of that agent would have a statement of intent for that actor. And so the idea model is still via participation. If that's an agent, how does it have a statement of intent? How does it have evidence of intent? And how do we moderate, manage, and sort of like, understand those things? But really, this is a human project. It's not really for agents. So the idea is to get people involved. The logical models underneath the idea model is that there's three logical models: the code experience, the observer experience, which we're kind of looking at now, the social experience I showed. Code experience is largely, GitHub repos, but it is built for distribution. It's built for federation. So it operates on a RACI model where to show up, to be participant, you become accounted for, you're accountable to your own acts. So that means you have your own statement of intent, and then you have your own evidence of intent as you contribute. Over time, if you're consulting within others and within peers and other experiments, if you're informing, then you evolve to get your own responsibilities in the project. So you become responsible for different components, different parts of it, or different modules, or different experiments. All of these things are built to dissipate. So while Open Data AI might be a founding node, the idea is that it dissipates. Its own RACI becomes less and less responsible for more and more because it goes into the federated model. And then it is, again, underpinning everything is a complex theory, theory of change, theory of information. And that's the fun bit. That's the bit I'm trying not to talk about too much and slow down on because it's too exciting. Getting to the data. So, in terms of open science, one of the things you do is you declare what your hypothesis is, and then you go ahead and you might run some experiments and generate some data, and then after that you get your data and you see if the hypothesis is testable and can be supported by the data. So the same process has happened here, where I've got the horizon hypothesis. This is one of the foundation ones, but generally all this is using like a perceptron, like in math, counting the number line, predicting when a prime or a composite occurs, and then learning from that, like machine learning from that, what is knowable across the number line, and how many levels in terms of deep learning you would need to hold the number line so that you can keep doing that with predictable accuracy. And what emerges from that over, I guess, a long series of numbers for any number 0 to n. And that's, part of the complex theory. But the point for the demonstration is just basically running through all these. You have your hypothesis, you have your code base that runs, and then, it's a JSON blob in terms of what the results are. And as I went through all these, sorry for this quick scroll towards the end, you're publishing the anchor. So publishing to ML data, it goes direct into the data repository, and I better go to it. So that's this. The going straight into the linked digital datasets, we have a collection. Well, that's the one I just published into, the horizon hypothesis. So if I go into that, it will have the exact same resources in the same data set because it's going in there. If you go in there later and you create more, then that's just the way it is. The experiment will be closed at some stage and this will just become an archive. So going in there, this may or may not make any sense to anyone, but it's basically sealing the hypothesis, and that's going into the GitHub repo in terms of what's being predicted by the code during the run. And then, that witnesses the fact that it was pre-sealed before it was run, it was written before the code was then executed, all that kind of stuff. And it's part of like verifiable honesty, I guess, in the process. Other aspects of this are that if you remember that resource articles, the articles themselves can be composable from these sorts of data resources. The resources themselves are set up to be soluble in that kind of argument, that kind of descriptive method. So the anchor family are all of those experiments, the ones that are sort of canon to the OOI, the information theory, complex theory, are all registered here. And so they all have their package names, they all have their ID, their created dates, modified dates, record of the record, the canonical face, the window, when they're witnessed, and who they're operated by when witnessed. So a key thing in the project is that it's not necessarily a named operator like myself, my name is there, but personas. So you operate as a persona, you act with those personas, and your acts then with this sort of way. So the purpose of all this really is to build a sandbox, show how this works, show how we can kind of create data that is more immutable, more and fundamentally connected to the apparatus that created the data. It is open sciencey. It is kind of evidence-based. If you wanted to put it into a regulatory environment, call it evidence-based policy. You might want to say it's cybernetic type stuff, where if this is supporting public services, then the delivery of those services have a prior statement of intent. They have evidence of intent built into them, and then they have data that's readable by anyone. So it makes the whole process ideally, very open. Now, I don't want to say too much. I want to go to sort of questions, but this is kind of a conclusion to the sort of like talk, let's say, before questions and having a chat. So what we just watched was basically declaring. So dev.opendata.ly, that's the social experience. That's where we're declaring something, statements of intent. We give it grants. We give it surfaces where things are going to be shown. It gives you evidence of where the code and everything is pinned. A lot of the content at the moment is just JSON blobs, so the content of those pages is just JSON files. So it's all data orientated and sort of readable in that flat file sort of way rather than database. Things are then observed and made observable. So the platform itself, OpenData AI, can observe the dev.opendatally. The concept there is going to be that they're going to be observing each other. The OpenDatally will be the social experience, and it will be able to declare what experiments run on the OpenData AI platform. And again, in that racing model where you have a distributed responsibility, people who build experiments deploy them on their own nodes. They can then control and give grants to those experiments and have a federated model around those experiments. But then everything gets resolved on ML data to OpenData.net. It's on the same domain as the observer, so it's basically part of that set. And in terms of the information theory or complex theory, basically what's observable, what's communicable, and what's effectual is what this is all about. They kind of pair up. So what is observably communicable and what is communicably effectual kind of locks in what the whole unit identity of this project is, of this whole idea, this concept. And when you compose them all, this is kind of what I'm saying, that I think that working in this way allows you to know what verifiable honesty is. What is truth? What is true really? Let's say over time, what equivocates to what is a known, knowable thing is what's observable, communicable, and effectual. So the records really matter. They become what's communicably effectual after the fact. But they come through a process that has a declared intent at the start. So an identifying entity or a unit entity, it operates authentically to that identity. And as it operates, it re-encodes itself. It makes itself observable, communicable, and it leaves records that are also communicable and effectual. So hopefully, this presentation, my one as a presenter, I have my intent, my acts, things that I've been doing. And tonight I've kind of conveyed some of that. I've hopefully made it observable and communicable. And hopefully, because the OOI is open for people to contribute, and definitely the sandbox in terms of other folks wanting to do other stuff, working with data sets that can be more actionable, ready for machine learning, ready for some of these challenges that we're facing. Like, it's open for others. Let us know if you want to play with it, if you want an account. It's actually set up for the ML Commons Datasets working group as well, which is why they're listed on there. It's a cool working group. I would recommend people coming along if they're into it. Creating the right data sets for the right future of AI is kind of like a really big responsibility at the moment. I think we have to really kind of catch that responsibility and hold on to it. So that's also the catch for folks. At the end, the idea is, if you do have your intent, you do state it, and you make it all communicable, observable, effectual, then it carries that intent. It carries to the next group of people that come across it, and it holds its own water in that sense. So that's it. The catch is off to everyone else, but that's what I'm going to go through, and very happy to chat more. I know I was very lightly touching on the CKAN portal itself, but we've got Ian here as well. He's been attending the Croissant working group meetings. He can speak to any of that stuff as well. But we are looking at using, this Prov-O in terms of the provenance ontology. So we'll be using that in terms of the declarative metadata and exposing that, making it machine readable. And there's Duo in terms of consent. So your minimal declarations of what's consented in terms of the data for its reuse is part of that as well. And it's very easy to do on CKAN thanks to DCAT and profiles. Yeah, questions?
All right, thank you, Steven. That was very informative. But I actually have one question. Let's give it to the attendees first. Any questions from anyone?
And I saw you there, Carlos. Cool that you can come. 11 p.m. Awesome.
Okay. So this is my first question. Oh, there, yeah. Oh. Hey, Carlos. So my question is, how is this approach or framework, Steven, meant to work alongside Croissant? You mentioned that this is from ML Commons and Prov. Can you simplify that?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of data, if you think about reinforcement learning, there's a game afoot. If you want to create a model that can understand how to play chess or Go, or a model that understands how to fold proteins, then you have to put some sort of weighting to the goal or the axe or the way you might succeed. So that kind of reinforcement learning needs some sort of externality. It needs some sort of game that's afoot. The way that I see Croissant and the way that I see the work of something like the OOI is we need to define our game. We need to find our way of optimizing for good outcomes. So all the normal human stuff that we do, we have to work that out. That's our job. We can't just leave it to the corpora of stuff that's on the internet to define for us what's good for us. That's not what it's for. We don't want, the works of Dickens or anyone else, like published works, to say that's what humanity is. So while Croissant is sort of put forward as a way to make data sets declaratively discoverable, usable in the context of what machine learning engineers would find useful today, I don't think that's where we're going. I think we have to create data that is for the games, for the dynamics that we want to actually improve. So that's where I'm starting at. I'm starting before the data at the statement of intent, and then I'm saying it moves forward, and Croissant is, it's the standard way to express that at the moment for people doing R&D in this space. I hope that's kind of an answer.
Okay, well, that's just fine for me. Any questions from the audience? How about you, Ioana? Do you have any questions in mind? Okay, so we got a question from Carlos from OpenSI.
How would a model deal with all this intent if it would help model make safe decisions? Well, I guess it's about the open edges. So there is a lot of alignment issues that go on with whatever the model might be. If we're just talking about LLMs, then it's like a transformation matrix. But what's the boundary of the transformation? What's the world within that language model? So the idea is that intent starts to create the identity or the unit identifier. I'm kind of using terms that are kind of relevant to the way I think about it, which may not be coming across, but say you've got a bunch of people in society that have different roles. They have roles to be, family people or people with jobs. There's a prior statement of intent to any of the works they create, and that's carried with their works. So the idea is that any data that is related to works should be related also back to the prior intent and the carriage of the identities that carry those intents forward. Identities don't have to just be people. They could be companies. They could be constructs. They could be cars. They could be trees. They could be whatever the thing is. The term that I've kind of used in the past is like people might think that they're introvert or extrovert. But there's something in between which is more like a chronovert. The idea being that in time, whatever it is that you're transforming creates the before and the after. So, in philosophy, you might say, trees falling in a forest, if no one's there to hear it, does it really fall? Well, what's carrying that event? It's not a philosopher talking in a classroom. There's a tree falling, and that's the reality of the matter. So the tree must be falling in a context that is part of the broader reality of the matter. So the tree falling brings into existence such things as forests and such things as people who might be there to hear it. And that's the kind of thing that AI doesn't understand. It just has context that's being given in a flat file or a flat sort of dimension of reality, of what matters in the world. And it's up to us to bring meaningfulness to that, to bring intent to that, and to bring cause to that. That tree, once fallen, will take another 100 years to regrow. Things like that matter, and so that's kind of what it's about.
Thank you. Thanks for that question, Carlos. The next one is from Nicholas. We are working on ways to provide open standards to codify trustworthy climate adaptation and resilience guidance data using a human agentic pipeline to validate. Could this approach or framework become open source? Good question.
Yeah, I mean, it's open to start with already. Some of that reading surface is there because I'm trying to open up the complex theory behind it. I don't know if the way I think about things is easy to sort of make understandable to others, or maybe I'm not understanding it too well myself, but I'm explaining it in different ways. That's open source, but is it knowable? Can others understand why it's important? That's why I've run the experiments. The experiments themselves start to demonstrate what the concepts are. But when it comes to trustworthy climate adaptation resilience, I think that's going to be about custodianship. So there is a concept here that is important. If you have prior statements of intent and you have multiple people, multiple entities making their prior statements of intent, and they're authentically executing on that statement of intent, and they've got evidence of intent, then there's an alignment opportunity. So stewards of data, stewards of environments, stewards of waterways, stewards of all sorts of things can see others' evidence of intent, and then they can co-steward together. They can co-optimize the way in which they're stewarding in their own domain, in their own responsibility area, and align with others that are also showing very clear evidence of doing the same in their area. So statement of intent, evidence of intent, is a really strong way to rebuild collaborative networks. If you think of trust being fallible, trust being trust by appearance, trust by influence. Influence is not something that's readable over time. It's something that is generated, but it should decay over time, because you need an influence might come from a really positive, good act. Someone wrote a great book with some great ideas, they become an influencer. But really over time, their acts are what their influence should be based on. So yeah, co-constructing stewardship is one of the wins that can come from this, I think.
Thanks, Steven. Another question from Carlos of OpenSI. Do you have a mechanism in place to verify the intent is legit? Would have some sentiment analysis or similar algorithms to catch contradictory statements?
That's good for contribution. I would say you can do that. But there's a couple of things that are kind of built into almost the philosophy of it, which is no engagement, no recording of identities unless it's declared that an identity wants to be declared. So some of these are actually things that you might say, well, that doesn't help. If you don't know who someone is, how would you know that their intent is authentic? Well, it's the other way around. It's not an epistemological thing that you know someone is legit. Someone has to be legit. It's an ontic thing. It's an ontological truth, an ontologically addressable truth, that their evidence is their act. You don't have to know they're legit because they're being legit, right?
Thanks, Steven. So, yeah, thank you as well, Nicholas. Lots of evidence. Yes. of, say, governments, bodies changing tech and going from trustworthy intent, often after an election.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like, like we see it often enough. People do things because it's communicably effectual, as in they can communicate, they can project their persona, they can project their statement of intent. But once they've got the effect that they want, they get voted in, they get the power attributed to them, they get the influence that they want. There's no carry on that they need to hold that identity or hold that statement or that evidence of intent into the future. By having it declared publicly, by having it kind of out in the open, it doesn't mean that you're held to liable conditions of being liable, like lying to people and saying I intended to do this, and then someone come over and say, well, you obviously haven't done it. It's about being able to supersede those things and adjust over time. One of the articles on the reading surface is like a kind of like a story that happened the other day, which is, I was outside, I can hear the garage door. Our garage door is automatic. It can either be going up or down. I wanted to know if my wife was leaving or arriving, and so I went to the garage side door, and I could hear, the rustle of shopping bags. So I knew she was arriving. Right, I was standing right in the doorway. She opens the door, and she's startled because she didn't know I was there. That's surprise. In terms of channel capacity and information theory, she opened the door expecting the nature of a door to be fulfilled, which is there's a vacancy on the other side. So she's like a 1, on the other side is like a 0. She's expecting to walk straight into that vacancy, but I'm standing there. And that's it. Like when we have that kind of surprise in life, it's because we have an expectancy of being able to move forward with what folks have created for us. And I think we have a lot of that in the way we can be misdirected by information, or we can be turned around or turned in the wrong direction, is kind of like that information theoretic point. In a household where you've got two people that really know each other, one might be leaving the house, keys in hand, jacket on. The other person can say one word and they will turn around. That's not the payload of the word, it'd be their name, right? It's the account of the whole household. Why would someone turn around when someone's about to leave and someone calls their name? Because of all the reasons, their history, because of all the things they do together and why they're together. And we need that in society. We need to know that we can call and there will be a turned response, that we have impact.
Okay, thanks, Steven. So we only have 14 minutes to go before we end the session, so we can have another 1 or 2 questions. But before that, while you guys are thinking, I'd like to share a link in case that you would like to join this experiment. Of course, it's a sandbox. Here is the link to that link lab. And then, for sure, we can also share with you a copy of the presentation deck that Steven presented earlier.
Yep. And I encourage people, if they want to get into it, everything's dev at the moment, so dev.opendata.ai. If you go to opendata.ai, for example, you'll see something I put up almost 2 years ago. But dev.opendata.ai is where the current code base is. There's a lot of vibe code slop in there, so that's fine. Don't have that hold you back. Part of the reason I wanted to build it and sort of demonstrate it is because of the philosophy, the information theory, all that kind of stuff. But the reason why it's anchored on something like ML data is because it can be checked, right? A lot of the experiments are concurrent, they build off each other. And instead of rerunning the code base of a prior experiment, it's actually loading the data of a prior experiment from ML data instead. So it's got these air gaps, which allow it to be, the dependencies, which allow it to be checked. And if something is shown to be completely off, then the next one has to be reconstructed. Yeah.
Thanks, Steven.
I think Mick's got a question.
Hello, Mick.
You're going to have one.
Go ahead.
So we're starting an experiment right now in a way. We have a whole bunch of reports and some data. It's all to do with low summer flows in a creek here, which diminishes fish productivity. So we have an environmental engineer just graduated assembling all this data and reports, but it's very text heavy. There's no continuous data set. So what we're doing is just doing a conventional kind of storytelling on what has happened to this watershed over time, which has diminished the productivity of the fish, and it involves storage and little dams and such like. So I'm coming at it from a non-technical point of view as to within 2 months having a very bright person prepare a report based on existing information and limited data sets. I can see conceptually where you're going with this, somehow checking it all with AI, but she'll have to get into the mechanics of the whole computer interface with this sandbox. So we're kind of interested in playing in the sandbox and seeing if it works on this particular project. But my uncertainty is, one, how data heavy does it have to be in terms of flow data, fish data, and how accomplished does the writer have to be in looking at all the code and spending time on the computer instead of going into all the existing information and simply simplifying it and telling a story. So it's a real life example from an old steward, me, trying to look after a creek with all my mates, and a very bright first class Trinity Dublin graduate in a new field, environmental engineering. So, you know, we're always ready to go, but we have limited time and money to do stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, all we'd have to do is we just create an organization. So CKAN's ready to go in terms of machine interactivity. So we create an organization, create a user, make it an admin of that organization, and your very bright person can just use current technologies, current tools, and the public documentation of CKAN to connect to that organization and create data sets, update data sets, do it all, you know, programmatically, let's say, automate it. But they'll also then go into the UX, and they can actually just upload it that way as well. So the good thing about the sandbox is it's really not, you know, it's not production for anything. We went to the wrong place. There's no one relying on this at the moment. If it goes down, that's no problem. If something goes wacky, that's no problem. It's really there for people to play with. So if anyone's interested, just like we've got ML Commons Zero Datasets, but Link Digital, they're all the ones I've created. Source Cooperative is a cool project run by Jed Sundwall, and we've harvested that from that project. But the idea is, if you've got a project, just let us know. We'll set you up with an org, and yeah, go at it. For sure.
Well, she's also interested in games, so that came up as well. She's into and I don't understand that stuff, but anyway, we'll look at it. We come at it. I guess it's looking at OpenAI with an open mind. So thank you very much, Stephen.
Yeah, no worries. But yeah, I am keen to build other experiments. Like I have to admit, a lot of the stuff that I've done on dev.opendata.ai currently is focused around information theory and complex theory. But the ones that I really want to do are art first. So re-engage with the idea of people publishing their own artworks in the community, adding a surface layer, a QR code, so that people can actually engage without resistance. Within the ML Commons Datasets working group, there's a lot of interest in different low resource languages, finding ways and modalities for people to support multimodal datasets for different languages. and using QR codes and allowing people to, record their own speech, make that part of a collective of data. They're experiments, they're new surfaces I want to kind of build as well.
Well, photographic files can be an important part of telling that story as well. So you mentioned art. Well, if you think photography has some form of art. Anyway, I think that's enough from me. I'm sure there's other people who want to talk.
Yeah, no worries. But it's about statement of intent. So any data set, if it's got a good intent behind it, a for good civic purpose, let's say, that's a cool, fun experiment. That before there's any data, that's the main thing, that there's an intent declared. And we build up a cooperative of all these cool data sets, make them readable. Yeah. And the OOI itself will be reading the data set portal. So it will be able to form its own opinion about how it's going.
Well, we're certainly well intentioned. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Nick. Thanks, Steven. So we only have 6 minutes left, and no other questions, because we could wrap it up, the Q&A, so that we can have a few minutes dedication for community announcements and sharing. Okay, I think that's all good. Yeah, it's so quiet after that. Well, oh yeah, you're good. Thanks. And I just have a question. So this is not a pressure to the CKAN Tech team. Do we want to share a quick update about CKAN 2.12? Anything that we wanted to mention to the people? Ian, Sergey, Adria? Okay, there's no.
It's been pointed out that August is a bad time to try to get out a major release because everybody's on vacation sequentially or at the same time.
All right. Thank you, Eric.
We will soldier on, and the 2.12 release is scheduled for next Wednesday, the 26th.
Oh.
Still some things to iron out, but we will get there. It just has been like bad timing for this particular one, so we had to push it back a couple of times, but I think this is the one that we'll make it to the next Wednesday.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you for that quick update, Adria. Appreciate it.
Cool.
Just one thing. Maybe I just how to share my screen real quick, and just to mention something about CKAN's anniversary. So you visit CKAN.org, you can go to this page, and if you have a case study or share your story that you wanted to tell the world about your CKAN experience, you can take part in the celebration. So you just click here, and it will route you through the form here. Then tell your story, and we'll take part of that conversation. You can explore the stories here. Oh yeah, with the adoption from 2006. Yeah, that's about it. That's just a quick share and reminding everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate.
Sure,
And
I think. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say thanks to everyone. Thanks for having me. I have been working on this for a long time, and like I said, excited to share, but I did my best to not go too fast or into too many of the things. But this Sunday, if anyone wants to come along, is the block build. That's Australian 7 a.m. So probably a terrible time for everyone. And August, summer. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, but appreciate it, Steven. And thank you all for attending. Thank you for sharing your questions as well. To close us out today, I wanted to remind everyone of the call to action for this presentation. It's the Provenance Sandbox is an active open source experiment. The team invites you to join the ODSX Collective. So share your experiment through, you can also check the mldata.opendata.ai. Again, huge thank you, Steven, for presenting today, and to all of you tuning in and participating. The recording will be up on our YouTube channel soon. So, Joanna, you go ahead.
Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks, Stephen, for the great presentation, and thank you, Kate, for facilitating, moderating the session. Just one thing, we are on the lookout for interesting CKAN presentations, or if anyone on the call wants to present, please feel free to contact me. The link, like my contact, is in the meeting notes document, and also we have a form so you can fill it out, and I will reach out to you. Yeah, that's it.
All right. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. We'll see you at the next CKAN Monthly Live. Bye.
Paul.
Thank you, Steven. Thanks, Joanna.
Patrick.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.